F1, so you know it's a pretty big difference. But I was defending for my life. I decided to stay on the outside just so we could get the inside lane there. Just on the outside for this corner, have a bit of a slide. Obviously we are on all the mediums, but I'm using all the ERS that I can, taking in. So that right there was me racing in PRL, aka Prospect Racing League, as a reserve. And up until this race, things weren't looking too good for me in league racing.
It's not looking good.
After a couple of bad races at Australia, and Miami,
Accelerates. Remember, there's no overtaking until the timing line. Safety car in this lap. Check your MF.
in WOR, I was looking to get a good result in league racing again. And since we had already done that race in Miami for WOR, I'd already done practice and test setups, so I was confident to show my pace in this league. However, things didn't go to plan straight away. So moving into the actual race itself now, I do apologize quickly for the fact that there's no audio. When I was recording, there was a little bug that happened with OBS and it didn't record the audio for this gameplay. But yeah, as you can see, it's raining for qualifying. It is going to be a dry race, so I am still on my dry setup and we're just trying to get a feel for the track now. It's intermediates for the entire of qualifying. It stays pretty much at this sort of level of rain and it actually dries out a little bit more towards the end, and you'll see what happens towards the end there. But yeah, as you can see, we're on our first flying lap now. Again, just trying to get a feel for the track and just feel how the car is going to react with this type of setup in the rain. Obviously, there's a few tweaks that you usually would make in order to get a sort of rain setup based on whatever it is that you were using in the dry, but couldn't really do that as we would lose a lot of time in the race if we were to do that since it's dry. But yeah, just feeling out the sectors now. Sector 1 was pretty decent for a feel out lap, and then we move on towards the end of this lap, and I was catching up to someone who was on their out lap, and then he was actually just about to go on his flying lap, which was quite annoying, I can't lie, because we were planning on going for another flying lap, and you'll see how it ends up getting ruined just because this guy's on a flying lap as well. But we do go fastest until Leo breaks that, and now 2 temps up on our time. This was a pretty good first sector based on whatever Leo done, and yeah, it did get kind of ruined because of Sushi here, but you know, you can't really fault him. He was on his lap and he had every rights to be there doing his flying lap. So yeah, going into the end of sector 2, beginning of sector 3 now, we lose all the time we had gained in sector 1, and at that point I thought, okay, we might as well just back out at this point. So we backed out of the lap, went into the pits, and then waited until the end of qualifying, where it actually dried up to the point where we were on soft tires. And on my out lap on these softs, I wasn't really concentrating on what I was doing, and yeah, we ended up smashing our front wing. And as you can see, I am absolutely pissed at that. I was just disappointed in myself just for the fact that I wasn't really concentrating on what I was doing.
Bruh, look at this dude.
However, we still had to go for a lap. I was forced to go for a lap because we did our fastest lap on the intermediates. Everyone else was going to do soft laps, so we had to do this lap or else we were going to fall so far down the table. So let's see how we can do around Miami with a broken front wing, braking just before the 100-meter board. Because we've got that broken wing, you can see we just about missed the apex due to understeer. This next section of corners, it was pretty decent, but again, you know, just a bit of understeer here and there just because of the fact that we do have front wing damage. Luckily, it happened on F122, where we have the 2022 cars that are more focused on ground effect rather than the actual front wing, or else we would have pretty much been screwed. Our first sector not being too bad. We did understeer a lot going into that corner, and we had a massive slide, but we're going purple. However, I do believe we were one of the first people out for a hot lap, so yeah, that probably is going to be improved by other people on the track, especially since they don't have wing damage. But best we can do right now is just continue to push and hopefully get the best lap that we possibly can. Braking for that corner now, carrying as much speed as we can. We actually took these sequence of corners fairly nicely, which really just shows how well the ground effect does work on these cars when you do have front wing damage, because we were still pretty much doing what we would normally do, hitting the apexes as we normally would. We ended up going purple in sector 2 as well. Once again, we are one of the first people out for this soft lap, so it is probably going to be improved on. Sushi ends up going with a 0.7, you do really want to be one of the last guys out on track in this situation, because then the track just continues to dry out and gets faster and faster. But as we pass the final corner now, we're going to cross the line and we're going to do a 1 minute 29.8, and that's how we're going to finish qualifying. Now we do end up moving down the grid pretty far. We end up in P6 after finishing on provisional polls, which was disappointing. And I'd like to thank all the people on screen for being channel members. If you guys want to support the content and get extra content that nobody else is getting, make sure to click the join button to learn more. And I do feel like we could have got pole if we hadn't got that wing damage. But moving on to the race, we're going to be doing a hard to medium strategy for this one. I like being on the quicker tire towards the end of the race, just so that we can, you know, push as much as we can towards that final few laps and really get a sort of big advantage over the guys around us who are going to be on the hards most likely towards the beginning of the race. But it didn't take long for us to get started. We wasn't doing formation laps at the time because I believe there was still a bug where formation laps would kill the online lobby. But here we go, lights out and away we go, getting a fantastic start on the hard tires. Dangerous getting a terrible start on those hard tires as well. We do have someone up our inside here who's braking early. He braked a bit too late and he took out the Ferrari who was ahead of us, and now after the first corner, we suddenly find ourselves from P6 to P3 on the hard compound tires. We are actually the lead runner on the hards. As you can see, Leo and Merckx ahead of us on the medium. So now our goal was to pretty much just stick with them. You can see now we're sort of in the middle of sector 2 now, just trying to get settled into the race and find our sort of rhythm. We do have Nimble behind us. I was sort of just keeping an eye on how far we were from him, just to see what kind of pace he had on the hards and see if he was going to be a little bit of trouble throughout this race. We do have a little bit of a slide there just because we took a little bit too much curb. But that's completely fine. We do end up with a VSC, which kind of just took me out of it a little bit, and I'll talk more about that as the race goes on when it comes to safety cars and taking you out of your own rhythm. But luckily, it was still the first lap, so we didn't have much rhythm to really go off of there. But moving on to lap 2 now, you can see that Merckx is following Leo very, very closely, and they're sort of building up that gap. Miami being a very mechanical grip type of circuit for these tires. So if you're on the softer compound, then you are going to have a pretty big advantage on the guys behind you on the harder compounds, and that's exactly what happened with them. They were just eking out time after time. You can see we do go purple for this lap with the 33.4, but by the next lap, the medium runners start to showcase their pace as Leo goes roughly about 5-6 tenths quicker than us. And again, we're just trying to find our own rhythm here now. I realize that Nimble isn't really going to be too much of a problem as he's losing quite a lot of time here. He's roughly about 1.6 seconds behind us as we speed up the footage, just to show you know, just trying to keep consistent whilst also just eking out as much time as we can to the guys ahead. Just keep up with them as much as possible, because then when we actually got into the pits, then we would be at a huge advantage. And as we move on towards the end of the lap now, we go into second gear, and that's a huge mistake. You want to stay in third so you can upshift the fourth. We upshift the third and we got a lot of wheel spin, and we ended up spinning the tires, and we lost a lot of momentum at that point, having to have a little bit of a battle here with Nimble for a few laps before we had luck strike us as he spins behind us right about now roughly. Yeah, there you go. He spins coming out of that corner on the hards. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm guessing he just put too much down on the throttle and it just caused him to spin. But that gave us the breathing room that we needed to continue to push against Merckx and Leo up ahead. Moving on to lap 9 now, you can see we're roughly about 4.8, 4.7 seconds behind Merckx. And we're just, again, just trying to push. They two are pretty consistent on those mediums. They're driving really well, and it was obviously quite hard to keep up with them, with Leo giving Merckx a sort of DRS, and they're able to just drag each other along essentially at that point. But luckily for us, on lap 10, Merckx makes a fatal mistake, basically. Well, not a fatal one because he's not out of the race, but a crucial mistake, and he actually ends up spinning, allowing me on the hard tires to get ahead. Now, at this point of the race, the mediums are slowly starting to die off, whereas the hards are starting to become the quicker race tire. So the fact that I'm now ahead of Merckx at this point in the race is absolutely crucial for me. And we can see now we're starting to pull quite a bit of a gap now to Merckx. So we get our first warning of the race, and we're just trying to catch up to Leo as the laps goes on. Merckx decides to hop into the pits after that mistake and try and get an undercut on both myself and Leo, and then Leo is going to follow him as we catch him up by roughly about a second on just that lap alone. So the Hards at this point, the fastest tire on the track, and right now I need to use this time. This is my hammer time. I really need to push because the guy ahead of us, no, the guy behind us, sorry, who's on the same strategy, I do believe is dangerous and scores at this point, and they are about a full pit stop behind us. So really and truly, we are battling with Leo and Merckx, and if I can actually overcut them, I'm going to be on the medium tires, guys, which means that we are going to be at a huge advantage towards the sort of end half of the race as we start on the mediums and we start to eke out time from them, just like how they did at the start of the race from us. But then a VSC comes out. Now, it sort of did disrupt my rhythm a little bit, but I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to hop into the pits now. The VSC has just ended, but because we were following our delta very, very closely, and then once you hop into the pits, you don't really need to follow a delta, it allowed us to have a pretty quick pit stop. And because of that, we actually ended up overcutting Leo, and by a huge margin as well. Honestly, this couldn't have happened any more perfect for us. As we come out to the pits, you'll see we're roughly about 6 or so seconds, I believe. Let's see, yeah, about 6.5 seconds, 6 seconds ahead of Leo on the quicker compounds. All we need to do now is just warm up our tires, get them to within the temperature, and then we just need to sort of get into our rhythm and stay consistent. And we have this race in the bag. We could probably win this race by 10 seconds if possible. You know, at this point I was feeling very, very good, just trying to build up that momentum now. And as we move on to lap 17, our momentum is fully cut short. You can see there's a yellow flag at the beginning of the back straight going on to the final corner, and a full safety car comes out. Now, as I said before, this sort of stuff can really sort of take you out of it. You know, it makes you sort of forget your muscle memory a little bit, how the tires feel, and just your overall braking points. You know, it just takes you completely out of the zone, and you can end up performing worse after a safety car restart. I personally feel that sometimes that happens to me quite a lot. It's something I need to improve on, just getting myself back into the rhythm as soon as possible. But yeah, safety cars, especially at that point in the race, wasn't really good. We had such a big gap, and now we've got Leo behind us. Even though we're still on the medium tires, it could still cause a few issues, especially if we have a poor restart here. And speaking of restarts, we're just about to get ourselves restarted here on lap 20/21. We get the restart going. I tried to go at a random time just to try and see if I could catch Leo a little bit off guard, but we didn't. He had a fantastic restart as well. But I thought, okay, well, we're on the medium tires now. We should be okay. It is the quicker tire. But one thing I did forget is the cars are going to have a lot less fuel at this point, just simply because it's towards the end of the race. And because of that, Leo actually ends up keeping up with us for quite a little bit here. You can see now we're already out of the DRS of Merckx, and I believe Leo is sort of hovering around just being able to get out of the DRS for Merckx as well. And if he can, that'd be brilliant, because then that's one less person I have to face. We do have arrows behind us on the softs. He's roughly about 2 seconds behind, so he could be a threat towards the end of the race as well, just depending on how quick he catches up. But on lap 22 now, you can see there's a pretty big gap between arrows and Leo, and I'm surprised that he kept up with us on the hards, I'm not gonna lie. So he did have a lot of pace here, but going into the final corner, I don't know what happened. I think he missed his braking point, and he ends up hitting the back of us. And as you can see, I was absolutely furious at this point. I had some pretty bad races in WOR going up to this race, and to have a decent race going, potential win on the cards, for that to happen and us to lose 2 positions, especially to a guy on softs, it was very frustrating. I was really annoyed at that point. Obviously, he did apologize afterwards, and I got over it afterwards. But yeah, at the time, I was furious. But as you can see, another safety car has come out. And at this point, I have 2 options. I can pit for the softs, like arrows and like Merckx, or I can stay out on the mediums and get track position. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, he's just done a Ferrari strat. You know, where's the Ferrari strats? I'm going to see you guys in the comment section. But my thought process behind this is I felt pretty confident on my mediums. Even though these guys will be on softs, I felt very confident in my pace and very confident in the fact that I could stay ahead on the medium compound of tires. So it was a big risk. And if it didn't pull off, then obviously I would look like a Ferrari strategist. Whether or not they actually do pull it off, I guess you guys are about to find out. But as we move on to the restart for lap 25/26, this time we do get a better restart. But as you can see, Merckx is so far behind us and I didn't notice. And if I had noticed at the time, we could have had a 2 to 3 second gap on everyone behind us. And that would have put us in a very advantageous position to just win this race. You know, just try and storm off and use all my ERS to get as far as possible and have them have the battle to catch me up. But sadly, we didn't notice at the time. We did notice a bit too late, but luckily we got somewhat of a gap at that point. You can see Merckx now is behind Arrows. Arrows is a huge threat to us. We do go a little bit wide there, but I do believe the stewards wasn't really looking into that corner too heavy. But then as we move on towards the end of the lap now, you can see reality has hit us. Arrows is right behind us, breathing down our necks on the soft compound tires. We've still got about 2-3 laps to go, and it was going to be very difficult to defend from him. You can see he does a 28.9 as we do a 31, so you know it's a pretty big difference. But I was defending for my life. I decided to stay on the outside just so we could get the inside lane there. Just on the outside for this corner, have a bit of a slide. Obviously we are on older mediums, but I'm using all the ERS that I can, taking the inside line here, using the momentum to carry as much speed around the outside as possible. And we're doing a fantastic job defending. We do manage to defend, and as we go out of this corner now on the exit, we look behind us and there's about 3 or 4 cars that collide, and I could not believe that. You can see it on my face. I was absolutely shocked. I could not believe that 3 to 4 cars, all who are my rivals to potentially take the win away from us, ended up crashing. And yeah, that pretty much gave us the win. As you can see, Merckx is the one behind us. He's 1.8 seconds behind, but he has an 8-second penalty. And yeah, I was feeling so good after that. We actually stayed out on the hards for a late safety car. Unlike Lewis Hamilton, we ended up managing to win the race afterwards as well. And that's how I managed to turn a bad race at Miami in WOR into a good race in PRL for Miami. Now, I actually haven't made any league racing videos thus far in WOR this season. However, I do have some coming, but for now, you can always click the video that's right there and check out a previous race that I had made for PRL.